I can show you the world. Tell me, princess.
A whole new world, a new
RPM is crushing it. I'm going to leave a link to the whole new world in the comments section. Mark Carney is heading to China. Why? It's because after campaigning, he was the only person to be able to negotiate a win with Donald Trump, the Trump whisperer. He has completely failed to secure any kind of deal with Donald Trump. In fact, we have more tariffs today than when Mark Carney showed up into our lives. So now he's actually trying to sell us that it's time to cozy up with China, when just 8 months ago, he said that China is the #1 threat to Canada. You can't even script something like this. Let's get into this report.
A new fantastic point of view. No one to tell us no or where to go.
Kate Harrison absolutely nails it right here.
Kate, last word on this, about this balancing act of values and value that we're kind of seeing on display with the China trip.
I think it's important to keep in mind that the human rights abuses that occur with China do not stop at Chinese borders. China and Russia, according to the NORAD commander, are regularly more actively buzzing our north. China has interfered in Canadian elections. There is more to be considered here than the plight of the Uyghurs, though that is also something that we should be preoccupied with. The reality is that we would not be entertaining this conversation with China if the Prime Minister had actually followed through on his promise to deliver a new economic and security partnership with the United States. Now we're backed into a corner of having friends in China and Qatar because we failed to secure the most important trade relationship that we have.
Right. Well, the U.S. plays a role in that too, though, Kate. Like, let's be fair.
How do we think the U.S. is going to respond to pulling back from Taiwan? How do we think that might look to the U.S.?
With Donald Trump, I'm not going to predict anything because I have no idea.
I don't think it'll be viewed favorably.
Kate is bang on with everything she just said, but do you see David Crocken saying, oh, doesn't some of it fall on the U.S.? No, we have a prime minister that said that he was the Trump whisperer, the only person that can negotiate a win. And now we're on our hands and knees going over to China. Yeah, that's right, our #1 threat, China and Qatar. Unbelievable. Mark Carney and the Liberals have bent the knee to the CPP, bringing home the Liberal MPs. Well, we just got some breaking news from Table Salt. Canadian Conservative MP Adam Chambers, Shelby Newman, and Melissa Lantzman have defied Xi and Mark Carney and has stayed in Taiwan. See this breaking photo right here. Despite 2 Liberal counterparts leaving Taiwan as Carney meets Xi. Wow. This is amazing to see. We're not going to bend our knee and bow down to Xi. We support an independent Taiwan. This just in, Canada's healthcare is so bad that people are actually leaving to get healthcare in other countries. It is estimated that 105,000 people last year left the country for healthcare. Here's the breakdown of numbers. But when you see over 20,000 people pass away in 1 year waiting on a wait list, people are desperate. What would make more sense is if the Canadian government actually allowed people to pay to fast track things. It would keep the money in our economy. It would relieve some of the wait list. But no, what we do is we force people to leave the country, the ones that have the means to do so, and spend their money in other countries. This needs to be fixed. Canadians are not happy with Mark Carney's most recent announcement. Canada's new government, which is the same as the old government, is investing $5 billion over the next 3 years for new and upgraded hospitals, emergency rooms, and urgent care centers so that you could get the health care that you need when you need it. Better hospitals, better clinics, and better health care. Let's see what Canadians feel about this announcement. Table Salt here says, That's $1.6 billion a year. You pay 31 times that in just servicing our national interest. Or DEI says, you're not new. You're the same old tired, recycled garbage Justin Trudeau government. Same incompetence, corrupted MPs. And Vesper here says, better hospitals, better clinics, better healthcare, choose conservative. I would have to agree. And you can't have a response without Canada roast. Canada's new government is Canada's old government. You are Canada's new government. You are Canada's new government. Screaming at yourself in a mirror. But you gotta absolutely love the national roast. Better bureaucracy, better corruption, better scams, better Brookfield. Canada's new government, bankrupting Canadians at unimaginable speeds. Brookfield strong. Oh man, what would we do without the national roast? And my 2 cents on this is that's just absolutely wonderful. We got better hospitals and clinics and healthcare, but where are the doctors and nurses, which is shortages of that all the way across Canada? Like 40% of the population doesn't have a family doctor. But yes, Smart Carney, just throw peanuts, $5 billion at infrastructure, and that's all of a sudden going to cause us to have wonderful healthcare. A new survey just came out today saying nearly 85,000 people are homeless in Ontario, up 8% in only 1 year. But don't worry, Canada. Our government says that our economy is booming right now and everything is working perfectly. Canada is about to be the fastest growing economy in the G7. It cannot happen soon enough. And you're not going to believe this? Gary believes that the gun buyback program was a massive success with over 100 and something thousand people. Only 16 people and 25 firearms were brought back in, costing something ridiculous in the millions upon millions of dollars. And now he says because it was so successful and they ironed out all the kinks, this thing is going nationwide. Check this out.
The pilot, we saw just 25 firearms from 16 people. Do you consider that a failure?
What I want to just outline is the issue of gun violence is an issue that's shaken this community, Malvern in particular, but also throughout Scarborough. It's an issue that impacts Canadians across the board.
How is the buyback program going to stop the violence in the communities? He doesn't even explain that. He just talks about the problem, and the solution isn't his buyback program.
Firearms compensation program, the pilot that we undertook in Cape Breton, had a very specific purpose. We wanted to test the capabilities that we have to both be able to register as well as recover the firearms that people wanted to voluntarily hand over to us. As an overall pilot, I believe it is successful. When we roll out the program in its full form in the upcoming weeks, we do anticipate much greater uptake. But as a quantitative issue, the pilot was never to test the quantitative aspect of the program. It is much more to look at the systemic issues that may occur. We were able to correct a number of issues that people had identified, both on the online portal and in other means. And I believe we're well poised to be able to launch the program in the
That's all a lie. I mean, of course there was. They were hoping that there would be tens of thousands coming in and only 25. But yeah, it was a massive success. We're just making sure all the programs are in place so this thing could work nationwide. Just wait till they do nationwide and nothing comes in and they spend billions, wasted money, and it will do nothing to solve the problems we have in Canada. Mark Carney, before heading to China, is in the coastal BC First Nations today, and he says he doesn't have a big announcement to make. He's just there to listen and have some dialogue. He looks so freaking weak in this presser that he just did, if he shows up to China and speaks like this, we are so cooked in this country. China's going to look at Canada as so weak. We need to negotiate in a position of strength. You tell me if this looks like strength.
It's an important time for our country. You know, it's a decisive moment for Canada, and I'm very focused on not just building, but how we build and how we build together. So today is really about a dialogue. It's a dialogue of what's been happening in the region, the projects that have been led by the various First Nations here, the various opportunities that do exist, the imperative of conservation, how we have been doing on conservation. I mean, this immense, precious natural heritage, which is a huge responsibility for all of us, but is core to the identity of the First Nations here. So how we work together to preserve that, to enhance it, well, we're looking for opportunities for development. So today's not a day for big announcements. It is a day, as I say, for dialogue, for listening and working. There will be a time for coming back with progress, particularly with respect to conservation.
How do we get stuck with this guy? He does not represent Canadians and the Canadian people. Do you see this little pin? If he represented you, he'd be wearing a Canada pin. But instead, he has this pin, which is the King's pin. He represents global elites and the global powers and the king. He doesn't represent the Canadian people. He could care less about you. Let's just recap this entire thing. Mark Carney's Net Zero January tour. Canada to France. France to Canada. Canada to China. China to Qatar. Qatar to WEF. Switzerland. And then Switzerland to Canada. Just so people are aware. That's all the way around the world and then half of the world again. That's over 100 tons of CO2. That's 6 to 9 years of emissions for the average Canadian in only 16 days. Rules for you, private jets for him. Climate hypocrisy in full display. And yes, if you want to see leaving on a jet plane, I'll also leave a link in the description section. Mainstream media is already covering for massive failure by Mark Carney in China, saying officials say Canada unlikely to get Chinese tariffs drops, but can expect some progress. Can you believe it? They're already trying to manipulate the Canadian masses, saying that there will be zero success on this trip. Can you believe it? I believe it. But can you believe it? This is unbelievable. As a Liberal voter, how could you accept any of this?
You won't believe what Mark Carney tried to hide from Canadians. Buried within Carney's massive 700-page budget bill is a measure that gives cabinet ministers wide discretion to exempt any entity from any federal law on the books, except the criminal code, for up to 6 years. So what this means is that any minister in Mark Carney's government could give any individual or corporation the ability to bypass virtually any federal law. The scope that a minister would have to exempt an individual or corporation from federal laws is extremely broad. The minister only needs to claim that an exemption would encourage innovation, competitiveness, or economic growth, and is in the public interest. That could mean just about anything. So take a big corporation bidding on a federal project. Under these powers, if a minister determined that the project would facilitate jobs and economic growth, the minister could decide, for example, to exempt the corporation from the federal government's procurement and contracting rules and award a sole source contract to that corporation, bypassing the bidding process. What sorts of situations could that be? Well, it could mean that Brookfield could be exempted from complying with the Lobbying Act, from having to report all the times that they're lobbying. It's pretty obvious that the exercise of these wide powers could open the floodgates to all kinds of conflicts of interest and corruption. And to top it off, a minister would have wide discretion to keep the public in the dark about having granted an exemption. A minister could hide the scope, the particulars, and even the name of the individual or corporation that the exemption was granted to if the minister determined that it was in the interest of protecting so-called confidential or personal information. So not only will ministers have wide and unprecedented power to exempt individuals and corporations from laws and regulations without any checks and balances, they also have wide discretion to do it secretly, behind closed doors, without any level of transparency. And speaking of a lack of transparency, there has been absolutely no transparency surrounding the introduction of these new powers. There was no announcement or press release. There hasn't been so much as a whisper from anyone in Carney's government about these new powers. Instead, they were buried in a massive budget bill. Clearly, Mark Carney was hoping that no one would take notice and that they would be able to sneak these new powers through without any public scrutiny. We've seen this movie before from these Liberals. In fact, the Liberals did exactly the same thing when they buried a deferred prosecution agreement regime in the 2018 budget bill. Within weeks of the passage of the 2018 budget bill, Justin Trudeau put pressure on his Attorney General, Jody Wilson-Raybould, to drop the bribery case against SNC-Lavalin with a deferred prosecution agreement. It was all by design. The deferred prosecution agreement regime was snuck into the budget bill for the corrupt purpose of giving a get-out-of-jail-free card to SNC-Lavalin, which of course had deep ties to Justin Trudeau and the Liberal Party. So why does Mark Carney want to give his ministers the power to exempt individuals and corporations from the law? We don't know, but something is clearly going on. It doesn't pass the smell test. That's why I've introduced a motion at the Ethics Committee. I would like to put on notice the following motion: to launch an investigation into Mark Carney's government to get to the bottom of what amounts to an outrageous abuse of power, sneaking this measure into a budget bill and hoping that no one would notice, a measure that grants sweeping new powers that will undermine the rule of law and open the door to all manner of abuse and corruption. We need to get to the bottom of this. Mark Carney has a lot of explaining to do.
Just imagine the Conservatives try to pull this. I don't care who's in government. They shouldn't have this amount of power to bypass laws if they want to. And if they get this approved and the Conservatives get in, I don't want them to have this type of power as well. This is completely unacceptable. And I thank Michael Cooper for bringing this forwards and going after the Liberals on this. Mark Carney posted this on his social media yesterday. It's time to build this weekend with Lego. You can't even script this. Imagine all of the memes that came out from this. Thanks to Ambassador Harris for the gift of solidarity with Denmark. He got this ship. This is the only thing that he is going to be building for Canada is a Lego set. Look, 1 million views. Check out what I posted on here. Mark Carney gifted the Ambassador Harris back. How to sell out Canada to China Lego set. Canada Rose gifted Harris his bikini in return. Look, the bikini even says Brookfield. You're going to have to watch my report from yesterday. I covered the bikini. Not this guy again. Look, it's the ski resort. Money laundering edition. Lego. I told you, the memes just build themselves here. That's no fishing boat. Canada Rose has North America. Canada Rose was on fire. Oh, man. And National Rose, Big Daddy Carney gave him his autographed copy of a smash hit called Leaving on a Jet Plane. That is an instant classic, I have to say. And one more, National Rose provided, one more from National Rose. Mark Carney gifted Harris Brookfield's Slong. Mark Carney gifted Harris Brookfield's Schlong. Now that is hilarious. National Roast actually shows a picture of Brookfield's Schlong all built. That's it for today's report. I want to hear from you. What do you think Mark Carney's going to accomplish on his 5 consecutive days in China with Michael Ma? That's right. And Tim Hodgson's going to head over there and help. I want to hear what your thoughts are, and I can't wait to report on that news as it comes in. So stay tuned. I'll see you on the next report.
I can show you the world. Shining, shimmering, splendid. Tell me, Prince.